So while I was at Cloudflare, I went to some Union Square Ventures events that were focused around like mind sharing in data architectures. I found them very fruitful and also made some good connections. But also, they just put on happy hours and things for people to come to meet and greet. You don't have to be a founder to meet an investor, and if you start before you're a founder, it's so much better. Because when it does come time and you're ready to make the leap, they'll be there, and you can talk to them, and they'll be happy to make introductions, almost certainly.
This is Hackers to Founders, a podcast about cybersecurity professionals who have reached the pinnacle of their cybersecurity expertise and have ventured into new frontiers, whether it's launching innovative startups or making impactful investments in our industry. My name is Chris Magistrato, and I'm a vulnerability researcher best known for traveling and meeting hackers from all around the world. And I'm using what little extrovert skills I have to introduce to you hackers that are changing the world. All right, and welcome to Hackers to Founders, the podcast where we dive deep into the journey of top cybersecurity professionals who have successfully made their leap from hacker to entrepreneur. Today, we're excited to have Alan Braithwaite, co-founder and CTO RunReveal, with us. Alan brings a wealth of experience from his times at companies like Cloudflare, where he honed his skills in building scalable, real-time data pipelines. Now he's using that experience to revolutionize the security, information, and event management space with RunReveal, making threat detection more efficient and accessible for businesses of all sizes. We'll be discussing Alan's journey, the inspiration behind RunReveal, the challenges of building a cybersecurity startup, and some fascinating insights on how real-time data and AI are shaping the future of threat detection. Plus, we'll dig into his favorite book, Slaughterhouse-5, and explore how the themes and chaos of absurdity in the novel resonate with the unpredictability nature of running a business. Let's get started. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Great to be here.
Obviously, I listened to the book, I didn't listen to the entire book, but I read up on some of it after you had mentioned it on the previous podcast you were on. So
yeah, Kurt Vonnegut is definitely one of my favorite authors. Just like the way that he presents kind of the themes in his novels, just in sci-fi, but also kind of grounded in reality and based on his experience witnessing the wars in Europe. Just kind of really changed my perspective on how to approach things in life when I was a teenager, particularly when I was going through a hard time. So it was like, pretty life-changing.
That's very interesting. Which of his books, what other books have you read by him? And how do they compare?
I read Breakfast of Champions. I read Slaughterhouse-5. There's one more I read that I can't remember the name of. But they're all pretty similar. I would say Slaughterhouse-5 is definitely his flagship, like the book that most people know and like the most. But Breakfast of Champions is actually, I would say, more funny.
It's more funny?
Yeah. Like, they're both kind of dark comedies, but Breakfast of Champions just kind of takes it and makes really funny jokes. Honestly, it's been so long since I've read them. I remember like the feeling of reading them, and I remember a lot from Slaughterhouse-5 in particular, but I do remember enjoying Breakfast of Champions.
Okay, excellent. I've had some like similar, like we have some similarities that like these books are sci-fi, correct?
Yeah, they're science fiction.
Yeah, so around like college time, I was reading Ender's Game. I got really into Ender's Game in that series.
Classic.
How he like is a child and then he's like going through, he literally has the weight of the world on his shoulders and he's a child and like he's doing his best, but you still see that it breaks him or it's hurting him a lot. And then in the next series of the book, it's another character called Bean, and I was reading that, and that was insane. That was so much better than
so good.
Ender's Game was. His story, at least on that first episode, and I was like, wow, this kid's incredible, and like it was really, really good. I remember when the movie came out for Ender's Game, and I was just like not happy.
It's disappointing.
It was so bad. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of like book to movies are like that, but that one was particularly disappointing because I felt like they could have done so much better.
That was my first experience of a book to movie where I
Oh
read the
man.
book and I was like, this will be perfect. And then
Yeah.
at the end of it, I was like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Yeah. But
Oh
anyway,
man.
I also really liked Ender's Game.
Yeah, was it required reading for you or did you pick it up casually as well?
I don't know if it was required reading. It might have been one of the few books I actually read on my own.
Nice.
I actually read quite a bit of books on my own, but I had a very specific genre, which was like science fiction
Okay, right.
and Harry Potter, of course.
And Harry Potter, yeah, yeah. Which house are you in?
But I consider myself to be in Gryffindor, of course.
Okay, of
Maybe it's because I'm a
course.
little bit full of myself. I don't know.
No,
But
that's perfect. Well, I mean, you could say that for Slytherin as
that's
well, I guess, right?
yeah. That's just what I associated with. Like I really like the whole like do what you think is right always kind of mantra.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about, where that compass of morality came from, and then how and if that brought into cybersecurity, or if that came later.
Sure. I mean, like, it's pretty deep.
Yeah, we're going
I
there. We're gonna go there
Sure,
if you
sure.
want.
We're going straight there. It's when I was young, I always wanted to learn as much as I could about the world, and naturally that kind of
Beautiful.
leads you down the path of like learning about philosophy. Um,
Yeah.
and so I took philosophy in junior college and um,
Oh, nice. You're studying
really
Kant.
thought I studied Kant, yeah,
Yeah.
and the utilitarianism by name I can't remember right now.
It's
Um,
okay. I'll clip it and we'll put it in there.
yeah, um, but I studied all that, and it just kind of what I came to realize is like there's no black and white. There's just a lot of gray shades, where it's as much as we as humans want to be able to categorize things as like truly good or truly evil, the reality is like there is just a huge spectrum, and there is a lot of things that we need to consider that influence our perspective of what we think about as good and evil. And so it had me really thinking about, cognitive science and how we actually assign goodness to things.
Hmm.
And that's, I wouldn't say like I set out to become like a moral person. I just really, in terms of like Harry Potter and
Yeah, yeah.
associating myself with Gryffindor, I would say that I wanted to do the right thing because I wanted to, you know, have you ever heard there's no such thing as a selfless act? Because by in the act of doing something selfless, you're actually gratifying yourself. Uh,
I don't know if I had heard it. It was probably on that show, The Good Place. Have you seen
yeah,
that?
yeah. I've seen clips of it. I haven't watched it properly, but
You'd love it if you really like moral philosophy. The entire
yeah,
show's
yeah.
on it, and it has a sci-fi twist, so it's pretty great.
Yeah, I do know the twist.
Okay, all right, okay,
My wife watched the whole thing, so
nice.
um, but generally speaking, like I uh, just thought a lot about that stuff and didn't really come to like super satisfying conclusions. But I liked Harry Potter because it was like so obvious who was good and evil, right?
Right,
And I
right.
think people really like things like that. They can associate with books and stories where it's very clear what uh, is good and evil because that's so unlike real life. And
Yeah.
it's almost like this form of escapism where, Lord of the Rings is the same way. Like Sauron's evil, the people are easily corrupted, and in Lord of the Rings they get a lot
Hobbits
more.
are very good, the bestest of the people, and
Yeah.
can do no wrong.
Yeah. There is a lot more gray area in Lord of the Rings because of the corruption aspect, but still it's pretty obvious like when somebody's doing something more evil aligned and more good aligned. And um, so, as far as that, like how that applied to me thinking about security and career prospects and hacking and stuff, I really thought that the hacker mindset really resonated with me. That is like always be curious, always be learning, and just trying to build a better world through technology and progress. Like that's
Yeah.
something that I think most hackers can resonate with, and most a lot of engineers too. Of course, there's a lot of overlap, um, but we all the stereotype of like working at a startup is we all want to build a better world, right?
Right.
And like it's not false. People really want to have that meaning in their lives, and I think it's hard to find that meaning at bigger corporations. And so when I got into security, like some of it was just kind of curiosity. I certainly at that time didn't see myself as being like somebody who was working in security full time, and but it never left me, that feeling of wanting to help make the world a better place. And I think that's what drew me to my first big job in security, which was at Cloudflare, whose like goal was to make the internet a better place. And they started out by like just adding encryption to the entire internet, which was, I won't say non-existent,
Yeah.
but like even Facebook didn't have HTTPS on their site,
Really, at the
even like
time.
late into 2014, 2015. It took them a long time to pick it up, but it was just like learning about security and learning how easy it was for malicious actors
Hmm.
who had nefarious intentions to be able to do things, I think also motivated me to get into it, because while it's not black and white still, like obviously a lot of hackers, a lot of people interested in this field are doing things that are like questionably moral. There's still, that aspect of trying to make things better for the average person, which is why I also think a lot about how can we make security more simple, how can we make it easier to use so that people aren't making the same mistakes that they have in the past. So
Got it. Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about like even before your first job in security, was there ever a
mhm.
time that you felt that, I am like, a hacker in some type of like sense of like, oh, I started taking things apart as a child, or what was that like like a pivotal moment where it's like, you know what,
Yeah,
now looking back, maybe there were some signs.
yeah, you described it great. I think like I never really considered myself to be a hacker or somebody that into computer security. Like when I was young, the most I wanted to do was to get around firewalls and stuff just so I could play video games, right?
Okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Um, it was very like
Which video games?
selfish motivation. RuneScape, actually, on the library
RuneScape.
computers.
Okay. How deep of
Uh,
a RuneScape hacking were we going?
I did not hack RuneScape itself that much. I just wanted to get around
The play at school?
to play at school and to play at the public library and stuff like that.
Good.
So I never got too deep into that, um, hacking RuneScape proper. Um, I know there's like duplication bots and stuff like that, but
Yeah. There's always extra stuff.
RuneScape for me was like it was almost as if just getting to be able to play it was the whole game.
Yeah.
Like trying to figure out my way to access that when I wasn't supposed to.
Hmm.
And maybe I should have realized that there was more to it. Like that's when I was getting into security, but I never really thought of it as a career or something that you could do um, to make a life back then. And it was maybe a lot less common back then too, in the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it was probably more difficult to like research and learn about
mhm.
those types of hacking resources. We have so much resources now. It's just like if you just, Google something, you'll find something related. But I
Right,
think
right.
back then it was a bit more difficult. I also
Yeah.
played RuneScape. I would I be I made sure I was the best chef, and I had my lobbies that I would be selling for prime coin. And I would venture out to PvP area, die immediately. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm not gonna I give up over there. I'm just gonna cook.
Yeah, I was the type of player who was a min-maxer, and I like maxed on strength, so like I wouldn't hit very often, but when I did hit, it was like a one-hit KO.
Nice.
So like run up, hit somebody, run away. If they don't have any magic spells to hit me from far away.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was fun, but just kind of silly. But then like I would mess with computers like just for fun, and I built my own like PC from components
There you go.
in high school to play video games, It
Yeah.
was
Other games as
my
well? Or
be all
mostly
end all
RuneScape?
then. I was big into World of Warcraft.
Playing WoW. Okay.
Yeah, of
Excellent.
course. Part of that generation. It seemed like it took the whole school by storm when it came out.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about it, and so played a lot of that. Probably too much, but I learned a lot too. Like I learned that you know when I was raiding and in guilds, I was in some guilds where I would show up like every day that there was a raid on time, and they wouldn't necessarily allocate loot. So for those who don't know World of Warcraft, like you go on raids with, at least at that time, like 40 different people, but when you kill bosses, they drop only a few pieces of loot. So your chance of getting loot on any given raid is pretty low. And I was in these guilds where I would show up all the time, complete the raid, and they just weren't giving out loot. And like, I was like, this is kind of lame. Like, why am I even coming out if I can't advance myself as a player?
Yeah.
And so I hopped between a couple guilds, and eventually found a guild that I really liked, that was really fair about how they did loot. And what that taught me at a very young age was like, you shouldn't necessarily have, undying loyalty to an organization if that organization isn't also rewarding you or giving back in some sort of way. And so that was I think an important lesson to learn very young. And I think it was just highlighted to me that it's really important to treat folks with respect, and make sure that everybody is, accounted for and shown the same respect that they're giving you. So that was kind of a crazy lesson to learn from a video game, but there's a lot of organizational dynamics in that game, and I think that really helped.
You have 40 people. You organize 40 people to do anything.
It was so hard.
Real world or virtual, like I would
yeah.
imagine the virtual world would be even harder.
Yeah, they had to be pretty strict in the best guilds about attendance. So, but if you attended, like, the guild should reward you for that. So,
Yeah. How did you said you liked that other guild more. What did they do differently?
so they took kind of a holistic approach. They didn't use something like Dragon Kill Points, DKP.
Okay.
They instead you would the way that they did loot is when you were in a raid, and you downed a boss, everybody would see what loot came from that boss, right? And then if you could use a piece of loot, all the members of the guild who were in the raid could link their current item in the guild officers chat. So they could write to the officers chat, but they couldn't read it, which was kind of, maybe pretty innovative. And so the officers would then discuss based on like attendance and seniority and how big of an upgrade it is for you, and just distribute loot that way. So instead of it being like, DKP, which could be gamed, or something else, some other system, it was just very much the officers were a trusted circle of people who could make decisions based on, how much people have been attending, contributing, if they've gone out of their way to like make potions for the whole raid, sort of thing, kind of crazy stuff like that. So, but it was fun. A lot of organizational lessons learned from a video game, which I think is good because I spent way too much time on it.
Yeah, no. when I look back at some of the hours that I've been playing, and like I think I know Steam calculates that. I'll look at my Skyrim
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh no, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I just divided by like what I could have learned. But you
Yeah.
know, the fact that you're able to take away lessons from those types of things is very good.
Mm.
I just played like Skyrim. I was playing single player. I don't think I got a single lesson out of 150 hours I was playing. So.
Yeah. I'm much more into
Oh.
multiplayer games. I haven't. It's hard for me to get really into single player games unless it has like an incredible storyline, like Zelda. Um, but
Yeah, I
Skyrim was huge for me too, for what it's worth.
Skyrim is amazing. I think it's still one of the greatest. But I even now I'll play. I really got into crafting games, and I know RuneScape was the origin of it. When I'm trying to get my
Mhm.
mithril pickaxe or whatever the case is, and now I'm like I'm really into crafting games. I noticed this actual past weekend. I was like, I gotta not play these games. I'll just get sucked into them
Yeah.
like so much. I'm like, I'll just get the next thing. Like that's mine. I'm like, I gotta stay away from that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I was trying to like reverse Pwn Adventures 3, also
Mhm.
created by Jordan Wines. They developed a game where you have the server and the client. Are you familiar with it at all?
Not particularly.
So
Is it a
they
hacking
basically
game?
just made a game for a CTF, and it was made
Oh,
to be
nice.
hacked. So you have the
Sweet.
server, you have the client, you connect to it, you analyze the
Uh,
traffic, and then once you analyze the traffic, you're able to determine like different parts of it, and then you can build a
uh-huh.
proxy to automatically change certain types of bytes to be able
Right.
to
Right.
do certain types of things. So
Nice. That's
it's a
cool.
yeah, it's really cool. So I was playing around with that it's actually like 10 years old at this point, but it was one of the interesting ways to like learn how at least some of the dynamics for game hacking. So shout out to
Mhm.
Jordan and and the team that
Yeah,
built
definitely.
that. It's a really great thing. But
Yeah, yeah. I got into CTFs probably in college.
okay.
That's when I probably really started to get into security in a more serious way. I
Hmm.
still saw it more as an avenue for learning and less as a career prospect at that time. But there was a point when, I just wanted to learn everything I could about computers, and classes weren't cutting it for me. I just could learn so much so quickly at that time, and just when I wasn't learning enough in school, I just went online and tried to find whatever resources I could. And this was so I went to college from 2008 to 2013. And that time was like right when a lot of the colleges started posting their courses online. And so I just watched as many courses as I could
Yeah.
that were like from Berkeley, like Site
Yes.
61A, um, MIT. They had a lot of good courses like on compilers and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I would just like watch these because while I do love the college that I went to. I went
Hmm.
to Chico State. I was in UPE, which is the Computer Science Honor Society,
There you go. Whoop
and Tau
whoop.
Beta Pi. Yeah, woo woo. I was in Tau Beta Pi, the Engineering Honor Society, and the
You guys play
also
Crash and Compile?
no, no, I didn't. There honestly wasn't a ton of interest in security when I was in college. I was like looking
Hmm.
for other folks who were kind of interested in it, and not a lot of people were. I don't know if it was like something like a bit of paranoia too, because I think the Snowden leaks had just come out around that time.
Yep.
Um, Maybe that was right after. I can't remember. But there's still the sense like that if you are hacking things, you're going to go to jail. Still kind of
Mm.
the um, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act hangover that people had. So maybe that was preventing people from getting interested in it.
You,
But
you know what I think? Like I don't know. You'll have to tell me specifically at Chico State because I don't know what their security courses or classes look like. I went to
mm,
SF State and there was
mm,
one, and to the professors and everyone at SF State, you're doing your best, but some of the content is just not as good as at least the community has been creating
yeah.
as of recent. So
I mean, I
I
think a lot of that has to do with like just the bureaucracy associated with schools, right, and education.
Yeah, 100%.
Not
Yeah,
necessarily the teachers or the courses.
I don't know. I hope I want to say I want to just believe it's probably just not even real that the teachers have some like authority or like to be able to share and teach what they think is going to be useful in the real world, but
Yeah,
maybe it's so
yeah.
structured by somebody else. I don't know.
Well, to some degree, I have a strong opinion here, which is that tenure, well, it started off with the best of intentions to allow teachers to be able to talk openly about what they, believed in education and study things in a way that wasn't going to get them fired just because they didn't share the beliefs
Was
of the
that the reason
administration.
tenure was created?
Yeah, that's why it
Wow.
was created. And so like, they say the road to hell is paved with the best intentions, and tenure is definitely an example of that. Because, some of my tenured professors were some of the worst professors I had,
I think that's the old.
candidly.
Once you hit tenure, you just instantly get to show your true asshole colors,
Yeah,
um, and
I,
yeah.
yeah, it was unfortunate. But generally the school was really great. The comp sci department at Chico is very, um, very job focused.
Okay.
So they taught very vocationally, but still did like the algorithms and stuff. So you had a good base for actually going out
Oh,
into
good.
the job market. But I actually didn't study computer science proper. I actually studied computer engineering.
Yeah.
Um,
So tell me, well, you're saying like you went off and started learning other resources, which is actually
uh-huh.
it's incredibly fun. I did the exact same thing. I looked at Carnegie Mellon's, Berkeley's, Stanford, Harvard's, computer. I looked at the computer science coursework, and I looked at all of the books that they were learning, and then
Mhm.
I saw that they're learning Dennis Ritchie's. Programming in C, so I started learning
Mhm.
C because of that. Because my university,
Mhm.
they were only doing Java,
Oof.
so I learned
Sorry.
C. Yeah, man, you're engineering, so you're getting deep to assembly.
Yeah.
We never even touched it. I think we learned MIPS like later, but I was just kind of like,
Uh-huh.
why? I learned C and then I learned Java, and I was like, where's the memory go? And they're like, oh, don't worry about that. I'm like, but I want to worry about that. I like knowing where
Yeah.
things are in computers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like, I went into computer engineering because I wanted to understand everything from the ground up, and I was very
Yes.
fortunate to have attended junior college because I wasn't, well, partially it was a big influence from my parents. They kind of wanted me to do the same path that they did, which was go to junior college, then go to state
For me, it
college.
was a financial thing. They said, you're going to
It
two
was
year.
financial.
And I
Oh,
also,
yeah.
I actually didn't even get into 4 year either. I was a shit high school student. So they're like, all right,
Yeah.
you're going to go to
All the best
community
hackers are.
college. Yeah, I went the most economical route.
Yeah.
Also the same though. I took philosophy. I took
Mhm.
Japanese. I don't know if you took Japanese. I took Japanese.
In junior college, having that 2 years buffer where I could really like, I knew I wanted to do something technical, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know exactly which route I wanted to take.
Yeah.
And I had grown out of my like apathetic high school age, and I really wanted to do something with my life at that point. Um, and having that 2 year buffer where I could study the technical classes for any engineering degree before I chose my major was really huge for me. And I recommend
Mm.
it to anybody from, my experience. It just gave me the time in my life that I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. And I had very good like mentors and my professors who
You
could
want to
talk me
shout out any
through.
mentors or professors that you had?
One was his name was Dr. Polin. He was my physics professor for 2 semesters, and he just was like so passionate about teaching, way more passionate than any other professor I had. Um, and he just went deep on any problem and would just make all the time in the world for his students. Unfortunately, he passed away somewhat recently, but he was a big inspiration for me just in terms of like how should you approach, the world just with curiosity and that sort of thing. So he was a big one. Dr. Robothan in I was actually in high school. He taught AP Math, the only AP class I ever took. Um,
Nice.
but he was also really good. He would bring up the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Okay.
Um, like the site and look at like job prospects in the future. He was
Uh-huh.
like, you can go into liberal arts degrees, and nothing against liberal arts. Like I love, the types of stuff that they create, and the value they bring to society. But concretely, like in terms of being able to sustain your life,
It's not a strong financial choice.
right, unfortunately. And so like he would show what the various career prospects and salaries are based on
Hmm.
BLS statistics. And that's when I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to go into engineering because
Oh, that's good. That was the
yeah,
spark of like, hey, this one
yeah,
makes money and
yeah,
you
it's
like it.
stable. And
Yeah,
I liked it. Not everybody can say that. Not everybody is as fortunate as I am or as we are
true.
in this
True.
career. Um, Not that it's all like sunshine and roses and rainbows and everything. Like obviously there's hard parts of it,
Mhm.
but certainly it's something that resonated with me, and so I went that direction and um, eventually went into computer engineering.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So, where did you pick up the cybersecurity portions of things?
Yeah,
Was it at the end of college, or was it? You mentioned it your
it
first
was
job.
solidly like, well, I would say it was solidly in college where I started getting interested in that stuff because
Okay.
um, when I was like steep on that learning curve, I started doing CTFs. So circling
Okay.
back,
So we were doing the
it was
CTF
in
sides. Okay.
college. Yeah, I started doing these
Did
CTFs.
you
Not
have
like
friends that you did CTFs with, or did you play that
no,
solo?
I was a loner.
Okay. Now it's hard to find people,
uh,
especially if no one's at the university doing. You gotta make them do
yeah,
it.
Discord didn't exist then, so there wasn't as
You're
rich
bringing it
online
back, man.
communities.
You're talking about AIM and MSN Messenger.
Yeah, well, it was like Ventrilo back then, but even Ventrilo, there weren't like
Trillium.
Ventrilo. Yeah,
Yeah.
Trillium. It was those, but I, found like IRC channels and stuff where I could like learn a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, the the CTF that I found the most fun at that time was called Over the Wire. It still
Over the
exists today,
wire,
as far as I
yeah.
know.
Start with that behemoth
Um,
and work your way in.
yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of really cool technical challenges that teach you like the fundamentals of reversing and shell coding
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing. And so I got really into that. And then I started to realize like this is really cool, but security is like there's a lot more in security above this layer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Uh,
always another rabbit hole is when I started realizing as well. I'm like, cool, I'll learn this. And then it's like, cool,
yeah.
you got this part now. It's deeper. It's like, oh
Mhm.
my God.
And it was really like Wi-Fi and HTTPS that got me really into it. I was like, oh man, this everything's so broken, nothing's encrypted, at least at that time.
You're not using the WPA2 handshakes at the time, or was everything WEP?
Um, WPA, I think, had just been introduced roughly. I mean, no, it was around longer, but it wasn't widely deployed, particularly like in public networks, like school networks and big corporate networks. They still had open authentication because people just didn't understand how to connect to
Some
Wi-Fi
places still
password.
do, and I just
Um,
wonder if they're okay.
yeah, well, fortunately, HTTPS has come a long way. TLS has come a long way. So
Hmm.
most things are encrypted. That doesn't, protect you 100%, obviously, and it's still way better to have encrypted Wi-Fi. But at least it's a better story than it was then. That
Yeah.
being said, I'm not condoning any public Wi-Fi hotspots. Don't connect to those, um, at least not without a VPN. Uh,
So I was full time at SF State, and then I was also full time at City College of San Francisco. But this
huh.
was after I transferred to my 4 year. I did eh, like 3 years before because I was just bad at math
Mm,
in Sacramento at a community college. But then when I got to state at SF State, I was also full time at both of them. And my
mm,
professor at City College San Francisco, Sam Bone, he was the cybersecurity guy. He's what got me into it.
nice.
And I remember, I think I can talk about it. He has the work published on his website and everything. But what he war drived by driving around San Francisco, collecting all of the
Hmm.
SSIDs and stuff like that, to see like how many are open and or what type of encryption. And he'd done this for like a few years, so you can
Hmm.
see the trajectory of like how more homes are being more secured over time, which is a really cool thing.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very thankful. Security today versus then, it's like it gives me so much hope to see the progress that we've made, honestly.
Yeah.
Things aren't amazing still. There's still a lot of opportunity, obviously, and the threat landscape's changed dramatically. But it gives
Definitely.
me a lot of hope to see that we have made a serious impact by improving things. So,
And I honestly think a lot of it is because we're talking about it and actually like it's become more of an open community about these things as previously, you know, like, touch a computer and you void the warranty and then you have the FBI knocking on your door. We've come so
yeah,
far from
yeah.
break your own stuff, go ahead, void warranties. But, if you find a bug, they might have a bug bounty program or you might be able to reach out to them. Like, I think after having so many people in cybersecurity, not just in management, where like I have to manage security now, but actual people that have like, no, I've been part of the community. I understand that they're not a malicious threat, and it's the attempt that they're providing this so that we can fix it versus like we need to send the FBI on these people. I
Right,
think that
right.
this made tremendous strides in our industry.
We have, yeah. Thanks, Hackers, the movie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know how much that's helped. It's helped as a
I think
culture.
it.
I love the thing, but that and war games, those are the ones where it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, any kid can just like launch nukes.
I
I think
think
that set us back more than put us forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think like War Games was a negative in terms of public opinion of hackers, but I think
Okay,
hackers may have been like a slight positive.
you think
Maybe not a
so? Do
true
you have your
positive.
your skates that you run around
No.
in your PBX
I
box?
did like skating, but no, I don't have my skates
I
anymore.
did too, but I, not as much as they did for everything that
Yeah,
they hacked.
definitely not. But they do talk about the CFAA in hackers, and they talk
They
about
do.
how like what the hacker mindset and ethos really is, which is about
Yes.
discovery and curiosity. And so I think that changed public opinion slightly, especially since the internet was becoming more commonplace and well known. When war games came out, it was just BBSs and dial-up modems.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, even in the movie The Hackers, they go over the hacker manifesto, and it's
yeah,
just that my crime is that I'm curious, which I think a
yeah,
lot of hackers and people in cybersecurity relate to. So
yeah, definitely.
it's a beautiful thing. So let's go from the CTFs and playing, and then getting your first job. Did you go to like DEF CON or any of the conferences around that time previously, or was your first job in security? How did
Yeah.
that progress?
Candidly, DEF CON kind of terrified me at that age.
Really?
I mean, I know I shouldn't have been, but like there was still DEF CON was fairly established at that point. And every year I would watch the videos and get really excited about when it was happening.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it seemed expensive to me. I didn't like Vegas. I don't love Vegas still.
Nobody likes
Uh,
Vegas, and if they do, they're lying. Like, or
um,
they've never been and it's their first time, and
yeah,
they still want to look around. But every hacker, I think, even to this day, I think everyone's just like, damn it, I got to go to Vegas.
yeah, yeah. So it was a combination of it being expensive and me not wanting to get pwned.
Of course not. Yeah,
Because
I
like
mean,
I was still pretty naive at that point
yeah,
um, in terms of what the capabilities actually were. Um, but I also didn't really see still at that point security as being a really viable career option for me. I still wanted to be an engineer, but because of all that, networking actually became one of the topics I was most interested in, and I got
yeah.
my first job out of college was at a fiber optic networking company.
Cyan.
Cyan, yeah.
Okay.
They eventually got acquired. They're now a division of Sienna called Blue Planet.
Okay.
And Blue Planet was the software that Cyan was writing. It was kind of like a too early for its time software-defined networking. So they were
Okay.
trying to kind of fill the same role that uh, like a lot of these super hyperscalers were doing, which is provisioning network routes across networks in a way that's efficient and done at a policy level, not done, using routing protocols necessarily.
I
And
see. Okay.
so it was like pretty cool, but they also built hardware. So I think their biggest friction was, and one of the things why, one of the
Oh,
reasons why
software
they
and
had to get
hardware.
acquired, yeah, is they had kind of this two headed beast that they were trying to manage, which is that they were had really great hardware engineers and they were building really innovative software, um, but they couldn't make the financials work out on um, ensuring that both product areas were successful and well funded at the same time. And as a result, like they're, things that are typical in engineering became big issues. Um, and they were really intent on manufacturing in the US, which I thought was really,
It's ambitious.
um, yeah, I thought it was really great. But of course, like that meant their margins were much,
Even
much
lower.
smaller. And I
Yeah.
think that hurt them in the end. Um, but they did make, the first 400 gigabit switch allegedly.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. Um, but ultimately, like, I had seen the writing on the wall. Like at that time, I was learning as much about business as I could. Um,
What were you using to learn about business? Because I'm sure a lot of our listeners are, deep in cybersecurity. They want to get
Hacker
into
News is
Hacker
pretty much
News is
my
your business?
MBA.
Okay.
Got my MBA on Hacker News, so I should put that
Nice,
on my
nice.
resume. Yeah, just like reading about startups, reading about how startup financing works, and like looking at the shares that I got. For some reason, I got options after Cyan had gone public, and I was like underwater the entire time instead of like as opposed to RSUs. And so that was a big learning experience for me because my shares in the company were worthless, and if I had actually exercised them, I would have had a huge loss, which I guess I could have claimed on my taxes, but that wouldn't have done me any good because then I'd be
No.
holding shares that weren't worth much. Um, but like really getting into the business side of things, I think is important for any role, just so that it's self-empowering really. If you want to advance in your career, then understanding how and why the business makes decisions is really important to, like I said, any role.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, like I just wanted to understand, like, why are things going so poorly when everybody around me is so smart? And so, just getting familiar with the organizational dynamics and what it takes to run a business is what I was doing to understand that. Um,
How many
but at
people were in
that
the company?
I think they got to about 400 people. I
Wow.
joined
Okay.
when maybe not that big.
Exactly, and that's where our company, Top 30 Recruiting, comes in. Finding the right cybersecurity talent with the necessary clearances can be a major hurdle. Did you know that it could take 8 to 15 months on average to hire somebody with a TS SCI plus full polyscope? At Top 30 Recruiting, we have a network of 1.3 million cleared professionals ranging from CNO developers, reverse engineers, and data scientists. Whether you're working on offensive operations or data analysis, we connect you with the elite talent you need fast. Visit topclearrecruiting.com and let us help you to find the perfect candidate already cleared and ready to go.
Um, I don't think they were that big. I think I joined about when there was 100 and they grew to be like 250 at their largest, roughly,
Okay.
in terms of head count.
Yeah.
But I was there. I was like already checked out when I saw the writing on the wall, and I had just accepted an offer at Cloudflare. And
Okay.
then the very next week, right before I put in my 2 weeks notice, they had layoffs.
Oh.
It was really unfortunate because as soon as they had layoffs, like I wasn't one of the ones laid off. I was like in that meeting trying not to smirk
Oh.
because it's like really sad news and I felt bad for my colleagues. But I was
Yeah.
like thinking in my head that because they called in all hands and they announced it internally, of course,
Mm-hmm.
like they do, and said when you go back to your desk, you'll be notified by your manager and blah blah blah. Pretty typical. And but that whole meeting, I was sitting there like, please let it be me, please let it be me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was not, and I heard through the grapevine that they hired somebody back after I left, which made me feel um, mixed. Obviously, I'm happy that that person got their role back, but also like the fact that they were laid off and then brought back on is gotta feel kind of weird.
Yeah, they're probably like, okay, I'm the next person cut. Like, immediately.
Yeah,
I need to start
yeah.
looking around.
So it was an interesting time, especially to get like an experience like that early in my career. I'm actually kind of thankful for, because while it sucked, like it was interesting to see how things played out and understand why things were going the way they were.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was at Cloudflare in 2 weeks' time, and
Yeah,
oh
so
boy.
I want to talk a lot about Cloudflare because
Sure.
the co-founder actually came to speak at at Sam Boone's class, my class in at City College of San Francisco. They're friends.
Was
So I got to
it
hear him
Lee,
speak.
Michelle, or Matthew?
Matthew, we got to meet Matthew.
Mhm.
I got to see him there, and then I saw him at I think I talked at DEF CON when he said that him and his wife were at dinner for their anniversary, and then there was like they got a call from a lawyer, and they said that there was like a massive DDoS attack that was like leveraging at that time. So it was a great story. But in 2014 you started, and I'd love to hear what the company's size was at the time, and like what had they just done, and what were they planning
Sure.
to do over the next few years and stuff like that, and what
Yeah,
your role
yeah.
was in it.
So at that time, it's kind of like my dream job. I was
Okay.
coming out of college, like 1 year out of college. I had been following them on Hacker News and the like,
Yeah.
and seeing what they were doing for, and just in terms of universal SSL, they had made a statement that they really want to make that something that they can help websites with.
Mm-hmm.
They really impressed me with, the whole you can sign up for free and we'll give you DNS and SSL. And so like it was really inspiring. And they were also doing things that were kind of on the cutting edge of web cryptography. So Nick Sullivan was the head cryptographer there, and he was actually on my interview panel, which
Okay.
was kind of
How
like
was that
flattering.
interview?
It was really tough. There's two things that I remember specifically about it though. One of them was one of my interviewers, Albert Strassheim, who was actually a big mentor for me. He's CTO at Rippling now. Shout out to Albert. He's really inspired me in my career. Um, but in our interview, we were talking about like how Cloudflare runs bare metal, how they're responsible for like building out the data center while building the application and the software. Because the data team, which is the team I got picked to interview for, they were building the first like centralized compute data center for Cloudflare. Prior to that, they were kind of utilizing their points of presence in order to, they were a startup. So like they used what they had, and they used their first point of presence as also their like management data center, but that's not very scalable and not easy to manage. So the data team was also responsible for deploying this new data center. Um, and so I just remember it's like, do you have experience managing hardware? And I was like, yeah, I'm running IPMI in my home lab. Does that count? And so for those who don't know, IPMI is something management peripheral interface or something like that. It's like the sideband management interface for servers. And
Yeah, I was doing that at Georgia Tech. I was
yeah,
like, we
yeah.
used IPMI. I was like, oh, what's that? I had to learn at the job. It was great.
Yeah, so I had it in my home lab because I had like a file server and stuff running FreeBSD and whatever. But
Hell yeah.
uh, well,
Get
because
it. Get the
everybody
server
knows
as
that
small as possible.
well, ZFS is the best file system that's ever been made. So
Right. Yeah.
that's why I picked up FreeBSD. In any case, I told him I used IPMI, and he was like, "Oh wow, I've never heard that before running in somebody's home." So that was really memorable because I thought it was kind of funny, and especially since like I became familiar with it because the server I was using, the IPMI module was listening on both of the Ethernet ports on the motherboard, which is like not okay.
Right.
So like I learned it, but also it was like there's a pretty big bug in the board management software that allowed it to do that. And
And what's a better way of
basically,
doing that?
well, if you have IPMI, it's really ideal to have it on a physically separated Ethernet port so
That
that
makes most sense. Okay.
um, you have your management network in a real data center, and you plug the management Ethernet port in, so you have access to the board controller proper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's physically separated from your traffic that's handling customer data, because that
Interesting. Okay.
is more vulnerable, presumably, right?
Yeah.
So just preventing that from being discovered if one of your applications gets popped is pretty important, which is how I discovered it in my own home lab. So that was a memorable question. And then the question with Nick Sullivan was like, how do you secure API requests using HTTP without like having SSL involved? And we talked about how Amazon signs their HTTP requests using this kind of convoluted sorting of the query parameters and hashing of the body. And we both agreed that if HTTP were not a text-based protocol, then things would be quite a bit simpler. And we're almost there now with like Quick and HTTP 2 and 3 and stuff. So it's pretty interesting. Good conversations. But I was just really inspired by the company and their blog posts and their willingness to share. And
How many people were there at the time?
it was about 100. I think I
Okay.
joined when it was about 100. They were in a tiny office in 665 3rd Street,
Mm-hmm.
which is a block from where their current headquarters is in San Francisco.
Got it.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was a really scrappy office. We would take like the lift for equipment and stuff
Yeah.
to get into the office for fun, because it was just open and there was no like reason why we shouldn't. That building used to be a printing press in San Francisco, so they converted it into professional offices. So
Oh, nice.
anyway, it was about 100, and grew very, very fast. So
Are all of the servers physically located there at Cloudflare, or are they utilized at other places?
yeah, they didn't really have any on-site servers at the offices. They probably do now, um, but uh, pretty much all the servers were in co-locations. So their first one was like SFO1, and they named them after the closest airport, which is pretty typical, I think, easy to
Okay.
remember. Um, and they had probably, I don't know, close to 100 points of presence when I joined. Now they're well over 1,000. And then the data centers proper, like the bigger central processing data centers, were the thing that the data team was building out for just network visibility and management and other applications. So um, got to see how that all came together. Like
Mm-hmm.
we were responsible for ordering the hardware as well on our team. So
Really?
like determining what number of servers and what configuration we needed.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, but also like we got to see some of the like cutting edge of our vendor, what they had to offer just in terms of like storage and compute density, and got to see some pretty cool computers, honestly,
Nice.
because they
And
would like send them.
these are
And we,
physical servers, right? Like you're
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Are you able to use cloud providers or no?
They were pretty staunchly against cloud providers when I was there.
Cool.
I think
Yeah.
they've like adopted some now, but Cloudflare is like a cloud provider themselves. They've got the number of services that just allow you could run your whole business on Cloudflare if you wanted to
Okay.
these days using workers. And they've got S3 like storage. It's called R2. Um, you know, they've
Okay. Got it.
really just built so many amazing products, and I'm really grateful for the time I spent there.
Yeah. So, what was the shift over, if you don't mind sharing, about moving from
Sure.
Cloudflare over to Segment?
Yeah, so like I said, it was a really, really high growth company when I joined, and um, I was on the data team, so we were responsible for, building out that infrastructure that I was talking about earlier. Um, and for me, like, there was a lot of late nights trying to keep the Kafka cluster online, and we were doing everything we could to bring the um, to scale the cluster and to make sure that we weren't falling behind in processing and stuff. And ultimately, like I was burning myself out. And so it was just really hard to like wake up, come to work every day, and I wasn't able to see how to achieve the changes that we needed to see on the team and in the business and in myself in order to lessen that toil. Um, I think a lot of it was just like when you're running a startup, when you're building a startup, it's really hard to know what to prioritize. And I don't know if it was that we just weren't loud enough or that we didn't make our case well enough to get additional servers or get additional headcount. But ultimately, like we just didn't have enough people in seats that were able to scale the pipeline in a way that wasn't creating a lot of operational burden. And so the operational burden burned me out at that time. And so when I actually went to Segment, that was one of my top priorities for ensuring that I wasn't going to get burned out at the next role. And, a lot of that was that Cloudflare runs bare metal. And like on the team, we were actually responsible for calling up smart hands and getting a disk replaced when we started having issues. And so like now they've like created a whole team dedicated to managing that data center and other data centers like it. Um, but the way that it had been structured initially was uh, Cloudflare had an SRE team, and that SRE team was dedicated to the entire global network, but not the data center that we were responsible for building out. And so, if we had that ops team earlier on, then I think that would have been beneficial. But there was a lot of reasons why it didn't make sense to have that ops team early on because we were like making a lot of decisions, changing things quickly, and we weren't sure how how to split up the operational burden when we were responsible for whether or not it crashed, because like you don't want to just throw something over the fence and let the next person handle it. Um, so at Segment, one of the big differentiating things is all of the engineers are on call for the software that they write. And this is a philosophy that I feel strongly about these days. Um, it doesn't work as well when you're a hardware-based company. And so we'll see how this evolves since people are moving away from the cloud again. But if you are in the cloud, like there's no reason why the software engineers at your company can't also be on call for the code that they're writing and deploying, right? And when you adopt that mindset and that management strategy at a software engineering company, they are in control of their own destiny, the people, the engineers writing that code. And that enables you to ensure that if there's an alert at 2 a.m., you can fix the code yourself. And that should be your top priority. We don't want anybody having to wake up that early in the morning just to be able to put out a fire, right? And so I think it really aligns the incentives correctly instead of having a separate ops team to ensure that the teams are able to perform at their best and the software, more importantly, like when you're not having operational issues, your customers are happier too, right? Your employees are happier, your customers are happier because you're not running into issues because those get top priority. So that's how Segment did operations. And as a result, I think they, had I don't think, I know they had a much easier operational posture compared to Cloudflare. That being said, it also helped that they were like 10x less scale than Cloudflare. Because Cloudflare was like, when I left, doing roughly 10 million events per second, um, petabytes of data being processed per day. Just absolute insanity. Um, so, I learned a ton, had a great time, but ultimately like went to Segment and learned about other things.
Yeah. So what exactly, for the viewers that don't know, what does Segment do?
So Segment is a company which is now owned by Twilio. They got acquired in 2020. Um, but Segment is a customer data platform that allows you to be able to build essentially customer profiles for remarketing to other tools. And so it started out with an open source library called Segment.js, which would send data to various marketing tools to be able to analyze. And it came out of the problem that the founders were having when they were trying to build different tools, where they realized, like, oh man, we've got all these tools that we're using to help engage with our customers, and uh, we just don't want to be writing the same code every time. We just want to write it once, and so we don't have to rip it out and replace it every time, or like put 10 megabytes of JavaScript on our website just to be able to use these tools. And so I didn't know a lot about marketing before I joined, so that was a big factor as well. As I knew that I wanted to understand more about it, and
What did you
so
learn?
I learned a lot. I mean, it's uh, it's a crazy industry. Like, there's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
a lot of gray area in that industry, of course. Like, especially
It's
now
a
with
trillion-dollar
privacy.
industry, right?
Yeah, yeah. With privacy being top of mind for folks, I definitely understand why people have kind of a sour taste when it comes to internet marketing. And there's like, you know, what I learned though is like the best way to do marketing is just give a lot of value to your customers without asking for anything in return, and let them experience your product, and give them useful things like tutorials, and help them be successful in their role, and you will have a better product, and news about your product will spread. So it was almost like this anti-lesson because it didn't actually require a ton of tools to be able to implement. But both the Segment blog and the Cloudflare blog are some of the best technical blogs that I've ever read. And so I think, it speaks a lot to sharing knowledge about how to build things as, part of your brand. And so Segment, one of my best memories from Segment was I was at a random party in San Francisco, just like somebody's birthday party, and a friend of a friend of a friend came up to me, and I was wearing my Segment shirt. She was like, "You work at Segment?" I was like, "Yeah."
That's
I
so
was like,
San Franciscan of a
"Yeah, yeah."
story. I
And she's
love it.
like, "Oh my God, you got me a promotion, because previous to Segment, we didn't have a data warehouse where we could actually know anything about our customers. And then I set up Segment with a warehouse, and suddenly I'm like the best product manager in the whole company." I was like, "Wow, that's crazy, but also that's really cool, because if you don't understand your customers, how are you going to build the right product for them?" So I really enjoyed the that aspect of the job, which is like more on the how to use Segment for product management, which is like, let's understand how our customers are using the product so we can improve the product.
Yeah.
And so
So
Segment was used a lot for that too.
okay. And have you guys utilized that for your product as well? Different market dynamics that you've learned from Segment into your company.
Yeah, to some degree, I would say that at this stage, we're much more in tune with our customers than I would say I was at Segment, maybe even at Cloudflare. But Evans was director of product security at Cloudflare for many years, um, working under Joe Sullivan, the CISO at the time. Um, and I've always been working on data pipelines, so we have like this particularly good intuition for what our customers want in a product. In particular, like you know, what we're building isn't conceptually that complex, but technically to implement it is quite complex. So we're just trying to make it really simple to ingest audit logs and understand what's happening in your network infrastructure. And it's like an itch, scratching our own itch. It's a fairly technical product. We haven't used any tools that are as good as RunReveal just for searching your logs and understanding what's happening. And so we haven't leaned too into these tools for understanding your customer because we don't really need them. A lot of companies have kind of this asymmetrical product versus employee profile where the engineers building the product don't actually have the problem that the customers have. That so the engineers are trying to understand the customer to build the right product. For us, like we are have a better intuition about what's needed because we've experienced these problems ourselves. But also, in addition to that, not to discount our customers at all, we sit every week with all of our customers and get feedback. And so they really expose areas where we were blind to, and help us build a better product that way. And I think getting in front of the customer, getting on customer meetings, having shared Slack channels is actually a much better way to do that. It's not scalable, so we'll probably pick up a tool at some point, but ultimately, like, I think understanding your customer by talking to them is probably
Yeah.
going to go a lot farther, especially in the early stages of a company, than trying to implement one of these tools right off the bat. So,
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I was doing a little bit of research and I saw, and I listened to the podcast episode with Y Security and yourself, and you spoke about how you guys will talk with your customers and see what they're
mhm,
looking for in terms of features. Are these
mhm.
paying customers, or are these customers that are utilizing your services for free with the intentions of paying later?
Yeah. Little of this, little of that. We do have a handful of paying customers who are very happy right now. Um, yeah, I mean, they have been giving us great feedback and helping us understand what the particular problems they're having are. It's interesting too because as much as we have something of an intuition about how this product should be built, there's still like every company does SIM or security data differently. They all have different needs. And so speaking with the individual companies is really helping us kind of round out the places that are sharp and really bring together the product in a way that makes it a really good experience for our customers. So.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's one of the things I learned at I took the Y Combinator Startup School course online,
Mhm.
and it talks
Mhm.
about how important as soon as you have a paying customer to start getting feedback from them,
Mhm.
because as soon as they pay, then they feel like they,
Mhm.
have a lot more to commit instead of saying like an unpaid customer is like, oh, this feature would be nice, but it's like, would you pay for it? And they're like, well,
Mhm.
maybe,
Yeah.
like if they're paying for it, then they actually are backing it with their dollar, which is really
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that was like really important to us as we were getting started too. Um, it took us a while to build out kind of the initial product that we eventually landed on. But ultimately, once we did, we had confidence that um, this is something worth paying for. So let's onboard our customers and get them paying us so that we can get real validation, not validation in hopes and prayers. So.
Yeah, yeah, that's so the Y Combinator and some of these accelerators. They'll have other startups exchange their products and tools and give them suggestions. And if you're not paying, like it's a massive. If you don't even have the problem, then it's like, why am I even using your thing? But um, I wanted to touch. Let's see. There's one thing I wanted to talk about. We were talking about. Oh, have you heard how difficult it was to integrate Stripe when it was first released? And
I have not. I followed Stripe from pretty early on because Greg Brockman was a big inspiration to me as well. But I never tried implementing Stripe when it was
no,
a long time ago. So,
like it was part of the White Combinator School. It was one of their talks, or they talk about like startups at the very beginning. The implementation so difficult. So I think like they had to like physically go over to the business and help them set it up.
Hmm.
And then they
Hmm.
realized this was actually kind of taking up a lot of like time and things, and they eventually smoothed it out. But they're one of their most difficult hurdles was that the technical onboarding and getting them set up so they could
Yeah, yeah.
physically go there.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a big thing for us. Again, inspired by our experience at Cloudflare and Segment, but just having something that you can just sign up for and start using immediately is huge. Not only is it good for the customer to be able to explore the product, but it also keeps us honest and ensures that we're, you know, building something that is useful for our customers, and we'll see if something goes wrong pretty quickly if people are using it on a regular cadence. So having that free tier, which as far as I can tell, like we're the first hosted sim with a free tier, um, which is pretty cool. I mean, there are like open source sims that you can download, and you can even download Splunk for free, but it's still kind of a pain to set up. Um, we just make it really easy to do. You can just start sending us data and analyzing it. And yeah, hopefully it's useful to folks. But we were a big believer in like not building in stealth, building in public, and releasing things, getting feedback, not only from our paid customers, but also from free customers who are using the product. So
Yeah, and the I think you mentioned in the previous podcast that by security that the cost for the it was cheaper for them to acquire Splunk than it was to actually pay for the license.
yeah, yeah. For the joke about Cisco acquiring Splunk is, yeah, it was cheaper to acquire them than to pay for a license. Which, who knows? Maybe that's true.
That's great.
Um,
Uh, I have a question about just the product itself. So, are people able to implement it and analyze everything on their own servers without having to send data out, or like, is there a standalone version?
so right now, we have a bring your own database product, which allows you to host the database itself, which has the data at rest. So that satisfies a lot of the needs of customers who are sensitive to data residency. And if you decided that RunReveal wasn't a good fit for you, you're not locked in. You can still have access to that data and figure out what's going to work next for you. So that's pretty big in itself. We don't currently have a hosted data pipeline, which is to say that you still have to send data to our AWS account where we process it before we write it to the destination. And so we may have that eventually. We're not totally decided about that yet, but we realize that's a big ask of our customers. And certainly, as we grow, we're building the product in such a way that we can eventually go to fully on-prem at some point. But we're just really waiting for the demand to come. And, candidly, like that's going to be an expensive project. Managing the nice thing about bring your own database is they just give us a connection string, and we can write all the data there and not have to worry about it. But once you actually talk about the software that's ingesting, normalizing the data, adding enrichments, doing validation, all of that sort of thing, and now streaming detections, which we just released last week. All
You
of
want to talk about
those.
that feature?
Yeah, I'll talk about it in a minute, but like
Okay.
managing all of those other features
Yeah.
with an on-prem solution is actually quite a heavy lift relative to
Yeah.
just having the database hosted in your own account, so that
Hmm.
you do have the security and knowledge that you know that data isn't you know co-hosted with other tenants, and also it's in your account so that if you need to disconnect it, you can. So.
Hmm.
Um, sure, but yeah, we just launched streaming detections using Sigma last week. You can go to sigmalight.dev, .dev, um, and see a demo of how it works in our pipeline. But essentially, Sigma, for those who are unfamiliar, it's a generic detection format that uses YAML to be able to describe a detection, um, and be translated into any SIM destination. So it can translate into Splunk, Elastic, and a number of others, I'm sure. Um, but generally, we saw it as an open standard. We implemented it in pure Go, so there's actually no translation layer right now, and you just give us the YAML detection rule, and we process it in a streaming context. So for every event, we'll run the detection, and if it's a hit, then we'll send it to our detections result table, and if it's a miss, then you can configure what you want to do with it. Um, so yeah, it's definitely go check it out if you're into Sigma. We'd love feedback. Um, it's very new right now, so um, we're hoping that we can gain, give a lot back to the community, but also kind of get some detections from the community because writing detections is fairly intensive work. There's tons and tons out there, and everything is going to be so niche. So we really just want to create kind of this wealth of public detections where people can go to figure out, like, so they see a detection that works almost for what they want. They bring it into their workspace and modify it just a little bit to maybe add some enrichments or something, and then they can use it. So
Is this something that your customers had asked for and then you guys had built out?
um, a little bit. I think there were some customers who were really excited about Sigma, but the grander vision here is actually building a very flexible security data pipeline. So I don't know if you're familiar with this company called Cribble. Uh,
No, not yet. Go ahead.
Yeah, Cribble is it's a company that does basically security data processing and you know data processing generally. It's kind of like this very large scale observability ETL data company where one of their big things, one of the reasons why people implement Cribble is to reduce their Splunk bill. And so as a result, there's actually a lawsuit between Cribble and Splunk
Interesting.
that was eventually, I believe it was thrown out. But part of that was the founders of Cribble were ex-Splunk engineers. So the implication was that there was some IP theft when they left to found Cribble. But it was determined to be, I think, a frivolous lawsuit. Um, Obviously, like there was a financial incentive for Splunk to shut down Cribble. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
but in
they're
any
at
case,
Series E too right now. So are they close
yeah,
to IPO then?
I have no idea. But they're a very popular product because it gives people the controls over the data that they need. And so we're also similarly trying to build that into our product. So kind of like a Cribble meets Splunk type product, where we realize that storing data in the database for active detections is very expensive. The compute's expensive, the storage can be expensive, but maybe less so. But the point is, like, all the data that you have to scan for every detection, that's costing you money. So where we're going with this is we want to build the pipeline that enables you to have very flexible routing over where your events are going. So you can only collect the signals that are the most important for active detections, and you can send the rest to your S3 archives, which are relatively cheap. And so Sigma is a step in that vision. We don't have all the routing capabilities built yet, but we should have them soon. And the idea is like you have a detection, it'll send it to your database so that you can run the contextual detections across all your signals and be able to do like more advanced correlations with your active detections. But you can still archive the rest of your data in in the case that there's an incident, you can actually load it back into RunReveal and do like a more formal analysis of it. And that way you don't have to pay all the upfront costs associated with storing all of your data in your SIM. Instead, you can just store the most important data in your SIM for detections, archive everything else, and when there's an incident, you can reload that data and figure something out. So
How many paid users do you guys have right now?
Um, I'm not sure that we can actually discuss that right now,
Okay,
but
that's fine too. Can you say how
um,
much revenue they're generating?
not right now, no.
Okay, that's fine too.
But we are revenue generating, which is good to say,
That's the
especially
best to
since
say.
we're just, a year and a couple, like a year and a half into this journey. And our customers have been just absolutely wonderful. Um, Actually, I just got back. Last week I went to a meetup with one of our customers, who I can talk about. They're called Harvey AI. They're a legal AI startup, and their security team there. We've been
Very
working with
interesting.
Mike.
Okay.
They built a really sophisticated like network flow log detection engine, which they built in their own bring your own database. So it's not something that we were sure that we were really going to support for all our customers up front. But they just took kind of the building blocks that RunReveal has given them and built this really cool, sophisticated network flow log anomaly detection engine. Um, and they gave a talk about it. It's on YouTube. We can link to it. But ultimately, like that's kind of what we want to do. They're really our ideal customer because we want to build a really flexible tool that people can extend and integrate with and not feel like it's a huge lift to be able to do. Um, and so, our customers love that. I think we're well positioned to be like the de facto security data platform, just in terms of how we're thinking about the product and just reading the tea leaves of where all the other security data companies are going and the other SIMs as well. So
Okay, and the for their data, they don't care about on-prem. They're okay with sending the data pipeline to you guys, and having it processed.
they are using the bring your own database product. So um, they are able to extend in their own way because the database is hosted in their environment, right? So, you know, that's works for them really well.
I'm trying to. It's just late here,
Mhm.
but I'm trying
No
to. I
problem.
guess like conceptually grasp because most recently I had a an not interview. I spoke with uh what's the name, the person at the UN that handles the computer systems there in the security department there, and they're having the difficulties of like they want to integrate AI more, but they have to utilize like whatever it is that has to be
On-prem
on-prem
stuff. Yeah,
solutions.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I'm wondering if your
Yeah.
guys' product, if you guys are like considering working with government or government agencies where you guys can get a large like reoccurring revenue fees and stuff like that, or
Mhm.
other customers that have a high level of compliance, but the obviously the cost for setting or doing going in that route is going to be
Mhm.
more. I'm wondering if and some companies they'll do this. They'll sign a letter of intent for purchase with those
Mhm.
companies, and then take those LOIs, go to investors, and say, "Hey, we got these big guys
Mhm.
that want to do it, but there has to be some additional funding source to be able to build it out." If you guys are bootstrapped there
Yeah.
too, you can do it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we're definitely thinking about that. Like I mentioned earlier, like we want to build that product. But ultimately, like if we can build and scale based on what we have currently and be able to keep like the complexity constrained, um, it's really, yeah, just about the complexity of the software. Like once you start shipping software, you have to worry about customers updating the software and migrations and state and managing like schemas and stuff. And that just explodes the complexity. So
Yeah, I imagine.
um, as long as we can go on this current path, I think we're going to continue. But that being said, like I mentioned earlier, we're building the product with very clear interfaces where we're able to um, see how we would build this for a totally on-prem solution. So our vision for that is to keep the control plane in our infrastructure, and then you can configure your SIM and your product, and the data plane would be living inside your environment, your AWS account. So very similar to Snowflake's architecture for those who are familiar with it. You spin up Snowflake in your own AWS account, but you still configure it through the Snowflake dashboard. So that's kind of what we're thinking longer term. But like I said, it's not a easy lift, and I'm really looking forward to when we can do that. It's a super fun technical challenge, but ultimately it's not worth it right now.
The fact that you're interested in working on these technical challenges really speaks to your excitement as the CTO. I would love to hear how you met your other co-founders as well, and like what was the initial moment where it's like, yeah, let's build this thing, let's go for it.
Yeah, great question. So Evan and I worked together at Cloudflare. He started in 2015, shortly after I did in 2014. Um, and, we met, we talked. We're just generally friends for a long time. Then we both went to Segment in 2017. And it was at Segment where we would just have like coffee chats because, we're friends. But that's when we started talking about our ambitions after Segment. Um, and we both wanted
Was this when the
to.
writing was on the wall, or not when the writing was on the wall?
This is after we went to Segment. So, I mean, at Segment, we knew Segment wasn't going to be our last career, last job. Um, a lot of, uh, a lot of the reason why you might want to work at a startup is because you want to build a startup at some point. So, we were both in that camp, and ultimately, like, we had a lot of conversations and like bounced ideas off each other and talked about how it might be funded, how you might like go about looking for fundraising, but mostly around like what do we think would be good ideas to build. And he had a lot of good ideas, I had a lot of good ideas, but ultimately like not in a position to be able to do that right away. And we also had a lot of opportunity ahead of us while we were there. So I stayed at Segment. He actually went back to Cloudflare after Cloudflare hired Joe Sullivan, the CISO, um, because that was a great opportunity for him, and he would have been dumb for not saying yes. So he had a great time and learned a lot under Joe. But while we were having those chats at Segment, I was like, I'm gonna keep Evan in mind. If I when I'm ready to go do that and start a company. Um, and fast forward, the pandemic happens, Segment gets acquired. Cloudflare, has grown to the point where um, they're a big company now, so they've got a lot of other problems associated with big companies, so different challenges for them. Um, and we were both kind of ready. In 2022, Evan reached out. I was already um, kind of looking for co-founders.
How are you looking for co-founders? What was the path?
Well, first, like I wanted something worth building, but also somebody worth building it with. And
Always.
I just at this time I was contracting with Segment, so I had already left the company, but I was still
How did you
on board as a
negotiate
contract.
that? Sorry, there's a lot of
Sure.
things you're saying right now that are just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm sure
I'm,
everyone's like, I hate my job. I want to go contract if I
yeah,
could
yeah.
do it.
It's not really linear. Okay, let me rewind back to the beginning of 2022. I had no idea that Evan was in a position to get started. At the beginning of 2022, I was pretty burnt out after the acquisition of Segment by Twilio, and I was starting to look for something new. I found a small company called Velocity, which is now called Numeric. Um, Shout out to them, they're a great company. I It was a small 5-person startup. They're building month-end close software to automate accounting. Like at the end of the month, you have to balance the books. And so I joined them as the fifth employee and like fourth engineer. Um, Had a great time, but ultimately, like, really just wanted to. It was joining a company that small that made me realize, like, I just want to be a founder. And, it was kind of like, it was hard because I feel like I let them down somewhat, because I didn't stick around too long, but it definitely opened my eyes, like, to the fact that I could really do it. It was the smallest
Yeah.
company I'd worked
Okay.
at until that point.
What were some of the motivating things that you saw there that made you feel like you could do it?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I just saw how the founders there worked together, just in terms of how they thought about problems, how they went about approaching uh, customers and having customer conversations, and um, talked about fundraising, talked about problem solving, and seeing the tools that they used, realizing that you don't actually have to spend that much time worrying about HR and dumb stuff. I thought it was important. I mean, that sounds really bad, but what I'm saying is, like, uh,
No.
payroll,
Like, yeah,
insurance,
operational things. You
taxes.
don't actually have to
Yes,
use
yes.
taxes.
So
Yeah.
those are all
Yeah.
solved now, very largely, to a degree, by Rippling. So we use Rippling. We're a Rippling customer. They were a Rippling customer, and, like, most of the barriers to entry I thought there were kind of solved by Rippling. You know, which is high praise for the product. I mean, we absolutely love it, honestly. Um, but it allowed me to realize, like, oh, you mean I'm not going to be drowning trying to figure out the stupid logistics of things? Um, that's great. So, I bid them farewell and went back to contracting for Segment, because I didn't think I still, wanted some income while I was figuring out what to do next, and I only wanted to be working 20 hours a week, and so it worked out. I, just kept in touch with my managers there, and um, they still needed people with my skill set, so I was able to work it out. I think it was, they don't hire many contractors, so it was. I can't give advice to people on, like, contracting or anything.
Well,
I think it
it
was just
sounded like you just did.
circumstantial.
Like, reach out to them, leave on a good note, if not a negative note. Reach out to them. And how did that conversation go? Was it something more to the effect of like, hey, how are things? Do you need an extra guy? Or like,
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like, um, you know, I think it's as much about, like you said, maintaining your relationships. Just,
don't burn bridges?
yeah, don't burn bridges, and don't go dark if you can help it. Obviously, like, life happens and it's easy to lose touch, but nobody's going to be, hurt if you reach out just to catch up. So, uh, definitely, like, just stay in touch with folks, and um, especially do your best when you're working with them, of course, because that's what makes the impression and gives them confidence that it's going to be a good hire. Um, so that's kind of how it worked out, where, like, they still needed the help. I was available again. I told them I didn't want to work full time, so it didn't make sense for me to be an employee. And that's that. We worked something out. They brought me on board, and I was able to work for 20 hours a week.
And you were doing this while you were waiting for your other co-founder to be ready, or because you
While I
didn't
was
think that he
looking,
was ready?
while I was looking for co-founders, yeah, I didn't know that he was ready and available at that time. I was looking for other co-founders, and also, like, working on side projects with the other time that I had freed up. And that was huge. Like, just being able to have that, like, mental break and explore, was pretty big. And so I got to work on some side projects then. Um, and then, I was talking to people, catching up with everybody I knew that I thought was ready for that. And then, like, Evan reached out shortly. It was like Thanksgiving week 2022. And he was like, I kind of want to build canaries, like honeypots. I was
That's
like,
right.
you're
You
crazy.
mentioned canaries and honeypots. I want to know as much about it as possible. I had a
Sure,
honeypot set up. I shared all my malware on
sure.
GitHub. I'm surprised it's not taken down yet, but it's
Yeah,
there.
yeah, of course. It's super interesting, just in terms of a great way to do threat detection, and we still believe that. We think it's really underutilized. Um, and so when he reached out, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. And so like the same call even, I was ready to hop on board. And we talked to a handful of other folks to see if they were ready to come on board as co-founders. And ultimately, like we ended up deciding that it was just going to be us two. And I feel like we have a really good symbiotic relationship where you know um, he pushes me in ways that I could use it and gives me encouragement where I need it, and I do the same. So we have a lot of rapport and a lot of trust, and I think that's super important in a co-founder. And so when he reached out, I was like, this just makes sense. Um, so so there was that, and like I said, it was honeypot. So I was like, thought it was kind of crazy because yeah, it seems really difficult, and it is really difficult. Um, the only like really established company in this space, I believe, is Thinkst Canary. They build kind of a device that you can plug into your network, and it can emulate pretty much any piece of software you can imagine. So we had a tough road ahead of us. But we were also thinking about taking kind of a different angle. Um, so Haroon um, famously thinks is bootstrapped, which I admire very highly. And uh, so this is really kind of spun out of a passion project. And they built a really awesome product and are doing really well with it. So like we had out the gate pretty serious competition. But also, we were talking to founders. We thought we had a different angle with like, let's build enterprise canaries where the focus is on SaaS and identity based detections, which Thinkst is more like on-prem. Let's emulate different types of software. And so we thought we had an angle in there. But the more we talk to customers, the more we talk to investors, the more we realize like this is really hard for people to fit into their budget. And until there's like an established precedence, it's going to be an uphill battle. And so we, we built some canaries. We posted some canary tokens on Twitter, actually. So the week that Evan and I got together for our first hack week, we built a tool to generate 100,000 AWS keys. And then
Oh
we,
wow,
just to prove
100,000.
that we
Okay,
could.
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
And so the idea was that these AWS keys would be monitored for access and usage. And if they were
Oh
used, like
yes.
they were only a canary token. So like they wouldn't actually have any impact to the business, but they'd reveal that somebody was in your network. The challenge is you have to know where to put these in a way that's going to be effective, you know. And so there's a big educational component to building a canary company, a honeypot company, which like we weren't really in a good position to be able to achieve. But we took one of those AWS keys that we generated, we posted it to Twitter, and we were timing how long it took before somebody used it before it got compromised. And it was like probably, I think, under 10 minutes before somebody started using the key, which like I wasn't sure what to expect. I was like half expecting to see it almost immediately because of bots. But then I was thinking like, well, how does the Twitter algorithm work? You don't have the fire hose anymore. So like somebody who discovers this is probably going to have to be like an in-network follower or something. But anyway, it got used in 10 minutes. And then not long after that, somebody took the key, and in the user agent, you have visibility into the user agent when somebody's using an AWS key. They started putting the lyrics to Never Gonna Give You Up. So we started getting rickrolled
Oh,
in our Slack
brilliant.
channel. We got alerts like, Never gonna give you up, never gonna
I
let you
love
down.
it.
And so we were like, this is amazing. People are gonna love this. But the more we talk to folks, the more um, we realize like, oh, this is really difficult. And so fast forward like 2 months, we're still like hacking on kind of MVP product, and we we looked at our data infrastructure to be able to collect the events, and we looked at like what it would take to build a sim. Um, and we were kind of building canaries with this idea that it would be a wedge into the sim market because sim is really people have a lot of feelings about it, and most of them are negative. Um, so like, there's not a whole lot of central log processing systems that are easy to use, cheap, and effective.
Yeah, like pick two, right, or something.
Yeah, pick one. So anyway, so we saw it as kind of an opportunity to pivot, and so we decided at that point, like, let's try and build this instead, and let's really work to build the best, easiest to use, easiest to sign up for sim in existence, and kind of never looked back after that point because the more we talk to customers, the more we realize like this space needs a change. Um, and it was really fortunate, not not for our competitors, but it was really fortunate that there was all this consolidation in the last year for us, because what's that telling customers is like, oh, the price of your sim is going to go up. They're going to look for expansion in your account. They're going to try and sell other products to you. And they're already unhappy with how effective it is. So we realized like, oh, maybe we can build something here. And it really resonates with our experience as well. Like Evan being a security practitioner for the last his entire career, and me
Yeah,
working in data pipelines, highly
yeah.
scalable data pipelines. So it just made sense. And we're, really loving it, scratching our own itch. So.
Yeah, your guys' skill sets like definitely perfectly play a role into your guys' company and how you guys are developing.
Mhm.
How did you guys discover or find your first customers? First, I guess, non-paid and then paid.
Yeah. Um, Really for both, it was speaking a lot to our network and then also publishing blog posts whenever we built and shipped something. Um, Word of mouth goes really, really far. And if you have, this is something that kind of goes way back in our career. Like, um, we really like people, we really like talking to people. So, it, maintaining and developing those relationships over time is really important. And we've been really fortunate to have worked at companies that have a lot of really smart people at them. And those people have gone on to other companies, gone on to found their own companies. And, um, you know, that I think goes a long way to building our network, and then just asking for introductions to other people who might be having this problem is really how we found all our initial customers, both paid and unpaid. But now we have, tons of people discovering us organically, which is pretty cool.
Very
And
cool. Very
just, yeah,
cool.
new signups pretty much daily, because you can just sign up, and that's one of the beauties of our product today. So somebody reads a blog, they see us on Hacker News, or they see a talk that one of us gave, and just goes to check us out.
And then what's the percentage of people that are having difficulty? Obviously, maybe in the beginning that number will be higher, but as you guys are developing out, making it smoother, that percentages should be like decreasing about the number of people that like need the hand holding, right?
Yeah, honestly, like, there's not much of that going on.
That's great. No, that's probably the best answer
I
you
feel
can
like,
have. It's like
um,
we don't have any difficult customers that are customers that are having a difficult time.
yeah, I mean, I would say there are obviously bugs in our software from time to time. We're really quick to respond to them when they do come up. But ultimately, like, when we have bugs, that's probably when it's more frustrating to customers, more so than the actual way that the product works itself. So, like, the way that the product works is you sign in and you click to add a source to get data in. And every source is slightly different in how you can integrate with it, but we have docs on how to integrate with the various sources that we have. I would say like some of what makes it difficult for customers, generally, it's not something that we have a lot of control over, but it's just the number of different ways that you can consume logs from various SaaS applications. So we see some common patterns, like sending your logs to S3 is probably the easiest way to get set up, because then we can connect to S3 using a standard procedure using IAM roles, for example, and just account federation. Yeah. So that's one of the easier ways to set it up, but we just recently integrated with Azure, and the way that
Congratulations.
oh my God, I don't know if it's congratulatory.
Had to learn the whole platform itself to be able to integrate.
Oh my. I have some feedback for Azure.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
They do this crazy thing where they update object records in place, which is so like imagine an S3 file changing over time. I mean, I guess they do, but that's like it's an atomic operation where it's like write and replace. Um, S3, they're actually like modifying the same object in place. And not only are they doing that, but they're appending to a JSON list inside an object in place. So we have to do some black magic to be able to track how far into this list we've actually consumed in this file.
Oh god.
So we're like storing file offsets just to be able to read a file to get the new data.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out a better way to do that. I would say that has probably been the most painful customer experience for our customers thus far, even though they don't have a lot of visibility into how this integration works. Still getting it set up and figuring out together with the customer has been a journey. And it just has showed me that it's really important to not be super opinionated with how you build your sources and just building a system that's really flexible to be able to handle these really strange edge cases for ingesting logs. Because, we ingest logs in Parquet format, line delimited logs that are just plain text. Any kind of format you could imagine we can probably support. It's just that is a long tail of things, and I know there's going to be some source that is really hard to support, but we really want to support it for our customers, and hopefully we can get to a point at some point in the future where we can help start to have community maintained sources, but I think that's a long way off. Just getting that interface right and getting the development process smooth is going to be difficult. So,
okay. A question a little bit outside of the technical aspects of things, but still very much important. You guys had just received some level of funding recently, right? I think it was maybe 2.5 million.
Yeah, that's right. We announced our fundraise in May. We actually raised in 2023, but we announced it in May.
How did you meet the investor? How did you meet this person?
We were introduced to Costanoa, our investor, through...
Is there a person there at Costanova that you guys work with directly?
Yeah, John's our partner at Costanoa.
John.
He's been fantastic.
Shout out to John.
Shout out to John. They've been just great in helping us get off the ground, understand where we need to be focusing more. They're, a great investor because a lot of investors are either too involved or not involved enough, and I feel like they found the sweet spot for us. And so they kind of let us make the decisions we need to make in order to be effective in our day-to-day roles without getting too micromanagey or involved. But at the same time, they've got our back, watching to pay attention to where we're weak, which we've shared with them, and where we could use improvement or help. And so they've they've been great, honestly. Really happy to have them with us on this journey. And
Excellent.
yeah,
And how did you meet them?
we were introduced through another investor, I think, who ended up passing on us because I think they had a conflict with another investment of theirs. But just introductions are huge, and if you're looking to start a company, like um, talking to the first couple investors might be difficult. But once you talk to a couple, like they're happy to give you introductions to other people, especially if they think you're like maybe not appropriate for their portfolio, but still have a good idea that's worth somebody looking into. Because VCs, they're like LPs in all each other's funds, and it's crazy. They all talk, they all know everybody.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
interesting.
I'm learning the landscape of the well. I'm looking at the start specifically this the security startup investor pool and feel, and it's massive, and then it integrates, of course, to um the bigger guys, the VCs and stuff like that. But did you would you? I guess my question is like, did you guys do like a cold email or like it was like some introduction that you guys met somebody else? It was cold emails.
No, no, no. It was an introduction. Oh, the first person that we met, the one who introduced us to Kosanoa, um, I believe Evan knew him from somewhere. I'm not totally certain. But I will say there are lots of opportunities working at startups, just as an employee, where you can go meet investors, just at various investor events. Um, I highly encourage people to take advantage of that. So while I was at Cloudflare, I went to some Union Square Ventures events that were focused around like mind sharing in data architectures, and I found them very fruitful and also made some good connections. But also, they just put on happy hours and things for people to come to meet and greet. Um, you don't have to be a founder to meet an investor, and if you start before you're a founder, it's so much better because when it does come time and you're ready to make the leap, they'll be there, and you can talk to them, and they'll be happy to make introductions, almost certainly. So I would just be like, when you're reaching out to investors, especially if it's cold, like just come with the understanding that they're getting hundreds of these emails a day, and everybody's asking them for money, obviously. And so just come very humble, put yourself in their shoes, and understand that like they've got a lot that they're trying to manage, and they're hearing so many of these things every day. Um, you know, it's better to like come with an idea and look for feedback than to necessarily look for investment. Um, Especially if you're using that
Mm-hmm.
approach. Like if they're
Mm-hmm.
if you know they're not a good fit for your portfolio, then ask them for feedback. Um, but ultimately, like, um, yeah, it's okay to ask for introductions, but you know.
Have you guys because I took this approach for the recruiting agency, Top Clear Recruiting,
Hmm.
and that I would reach out to potential people that I know have more experience in the area and ask if they would be interested in being part of an advisory board where I could issue
Hmm.
them like a small like maybe like a point or something like
Hmm.
this. Have you guys do you guys have any experience with that?
Yeah, we've got some advisors. They've been very helpful. Yeah, I mean, we've got some practitioners and some CISOs on our advisory. I don't know if you'd call it a board, but who are just as advisors who we've given some equity to. So, and they give great feedback. We meet with them pretty regularly, and just talk about like what our problems are, where we're going, just as much help as you can get giving you feedback for the product, especially at the early stage. It's just absolutely worth it. So, highly
Beautiful.
recommend that strategy.
Okay. And now for the question that I had previously when we had the introduction.
Sure.
So talking about Billy Pilgrim, he becomes unstuck in time, seeing his life out of order.
Okay.
In running a business,
Uh-huh.
how do you balance looking at the bigger picture versus focusing on the moment, especially when building
Mm,
long-term goals?
that is an excellent question.
Shout out ChatGPT for that one.
Yeah. This is Kurt Vonnegut, folks.
Yeah.
Slaughterhouse Five. I think Billy Pilgrim was Slaughterhouse Five, right? He's the main character. Um, anyway, so he meets the Tralfamadorians who kind of live in this like uh, timeless space, right? They're said to have like be living on the next dimension, the next level, and something that they experience when they're experiencing something in the moment, they're experiencing all moments at all time simultaneously. So like
Mm-hmm.
when something happens, they might not have the same reaction that you would expect like a normal human to have because they have seen um, the phrase in the book that's used a lot is "so it goes."
So it goes.
It's not. I guess it's not really a spoiler because it happens pretty early in the book. But the Tralfamadorians say "so it goes" when somebody passes away, or when something happens because they still, that person doesn't exist in the way that we sense them as humans living in the third dimension, traveling through time. But in their mind, they still see all of the moments of that person's life that were happy, all the moments where they were successful, all the moments where they've had a lot of joy in their life. And um, this was really moving for me, but also made me realize like um, while it's important to keep the big picture in mind, um, it's also really important to be in the moment and to focus. Um, so I practice a lot of meditation and mindfulness to
Mm-hmm.
help me hone this. It's really a skill that can be learned, um,
Right.
and I found that I can both. It's important to keep the big picture in mind so that you have a vision, you know where you're going. You're not just like wandering aimlessly through the fog, but at the same time like not letting that consume you and being able to set that all aside when it comes time to really focus on what you need to get done and not get distracted by things like social media or the news or what have you, or more concretely not getting distracted by your competitors, not getting distracted by all the other things that you're going to have to do. Or the classic engineering thing is like, oh, this isn't going to scale, this is going to fall over. It's like um, experience tells you what is going to scale long term and what isn't going to scale long term, and it's important to keep those things in mind. So it's still important to
Yes.
have that vision of what you want to build, but it's only experience that's going to tell you whether or not something will be easy to change or hard to change later.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that's where we kind of have an advantage as founders who have worked in the industry for quite a while, not coming right out of college. Even though uh, the folks coming out of college might have a lot more energy than us, which I beg to differ, candidly, but that's what people might have an impression of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have the experience to be able to know like what's going to work long term and what's going to work short term and how to kind
Yeah.
of take advantage of that balance. Um, and so bringing that back to the Tralfamadorians and kind of seeing things at a big and small scale, um, I think it's important to really live in the moment, so to speak. It's a cliche because you hear it all the time. But the reality is, when you can really bring yourself in and just focus on what's important right now and
Mm-hmm.
be able to push out the distractions of what's important in the long term, that's going to make you much more effective at doing what you need to do. That's what allows you to get things done and, ship a lot of code. Um, but keeping that long-term mindset in mind, um, even setting aside time to be able to think about those things, um, helps a lot because that's how you're going to basically set the roadmap of where you want to go and not build 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction, right?
Right.
Because you can be focused and in the moment and be going the wrong way, which isn't very helpful. So, and I think really what that book highlights is it's possible to have both, but it takes practice to be able to do well. And the way that I recommend people do this is through meditation, and just practicing removing distractions from your mind and training your mind to be able to handle that kind of dichotomy. So
yeah, I think it's a unique thing that I think more founders have it than engineers, just because as an engineer you're always thinking, especially in companies, you're always thinking about scaling, getting bigger. Where are we gonna have to like grow this automation? And as a founder you have to sometimes say, not right now. We have to wait on this, and in the future we can scale and do those things. And I think that's the difference between entrepreneurs that are looking at it long term versus ones that are still in the engineering mindset, where it's like, oh, I need to do this one task. It could take 15 minutes. However, I could automate it, which will take 2 to 4 days.
Yeah,
and it's like,
XKCD
is it worth those
problem.
4 days? Not usually. Maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah,
So,
especially
getting
if
in
you
that
like
caught loop.
yeah, if you automate something and then it's suddenly not necessary, that's wasted time, so
Wasted time. And
yeah.
All right. So I have about one more question. I'd like to know
Sure.
any additional books or resources that you think that have been meaningful. We've mentioned a few, but any other types of books or things that you feel that you'd like to share with the audience that have helped you, whether it be through business or technical books, anything, or even philosophy and psychology books.
Sure. I should always have this one prepared. It's asked so frequently.
It's one of my favorite questions. I have a lot of business books I could go into ones I've read.
Yeah, I do too. I was trying to think. Let me look at my bookshelf over here.
Yeah, go look at your bookshelf. You can show your bookshelf too. It's my favorite thing to. It's the place I go straight to, and I go to someone's house.
Yeah, it's like embarrassing though, because a lot of them I haven't read yet.
That's fine. You open a page. You bought it. It's fine
There
enough to
you
say.
go.
What we got? I see the dummies
Focus.
book because it's in color. Okay. Oh, it was
Why
kind of
isn't it not
focused.
focusing?
I see red, so I know that's malware analysis.
Oh, I know why it's not
pen
focusing.
testing.
It's because I have portrait mode on. There you go.
There we go. Windows security internals. Oh, the POG GTFO by Travis Goodspeed.
Yeah.
Hacking. The Art of Deception.
Hacking for Dummies. That was my first hacking book.
The Stoicism.
Yeah,
White
Stoicism, Daily Stoic.
Nice.
I practice Stoicism sometimes. It's very similar. It's like the Western version of like Zen Buddhism. So it's kind of cool. I mean, like, I don't know. I've been reading The Art of Zen recently, which it's like fairly recent, but it's by Alan Watts, I think. He was like the first Western author to visit and document what it's like to be a Buddhist. I wouldn't consider myself a Buddhist or anything, but I do think that Western culture could benefit a lot from Eastern philosophy. They have a lot of good advice, I guess, good philosophies around how to actually manage your mind in this absolutely crazy world we live in. And it gets a lot to talking about kind of the themes that we've talked about here in the last hour or so, which is, Buddhism, particularly Zen Buddhism, talks a lot about how you can think about various aspects of life and philosophy and be able to deal with adversity in your own life. And a lot of that, comes into play when, it's very much high level. It's not anything founder specific, but I think it's really beneficial to folks to be taking care of their mental health. And of course, definitely therapy helps too, but also
Yeah.
just going kind of outside your comfort zone and learning more about philosophy and how to think about thinking and that sort of thing has helped me a lot in my life and in my journey. So it certainly helps now as well, being a founder. But I think it helped
Beautiful.
long before that too. So I would recommend it. I'm like 3/4 of the way through, and I've learned a ton about, it's kind of like historical, but also very practical as well. So
Okay, beautiful. And then you and I, do you know where we originally had met from? Was it B-Sides or somewhere
we
else?
met, I think, at Tour Camp 2022.
So it was at Tour
We
Camp we
were,
met, right?
yeah, we
You guys were
were
our
camping
neighbors.
neighbors. Yep,
Yeah,
that
that's
was fun.
right.
It was a good. That was my first tour camp. Had a great
That
time.
was
Had known about
my
it
first
for
tour camp as
ages.
well. Shout out Tour Camp.
Yeah, shout out to all the organizers there. They put on just an incredible event. Really appreciate those folks. Um, and yeah, I mean, like, it's really about the community, and that's something we hope to channel at RunReveal as well. So
Yeah, and I'd like to know and then we also met at CCC camp, and I would love to
that's right.
hear your experience at both the camps and how that's translated into your business,
Sure.
if it has.
I mean, like,
If it has.
uh, I don't know if that
Or
has really.
how it's been
Um,
relaxing outside of work and
yeah, yeah.
business life.
So, CCC, I had known about for a long time. Like, it definitely gets to the hacker ethos, wanting to make the world a better place through um, basically sharing knowledge and how to do things. Um, and going to CCC was one of the things I've wanted to do since I learned about it, essentially.
The
Um,
camp or the Congress?
Specifically the camp. I haven't been to the
Yeah,
Congress yet. I'd love to go to the Congress, but um,
same.
I find that those events are really inspirational. Like, just getting to meet all these folks who have such a wide and varied interests and really are passionate about whatever it is that they are interested in, and then sharing that passion with everybody really
Yeah.
invigorates me to go and build things and to explore like new uh, new topics that I never thought about in from the perspective of a hacker. And I think that's where those really shine. Is like, I think it's, yeah, a lot more about recovery and recuperation, and
Yeah.
just getting to spend time with folks that I really appreciate their company. Um, so I find that to be, one of the reasons why I go to those camps. I don't think that it's really influenced the business at all, so to speak.
That's
Um,
fair, yeah.
but
I
they've,
yeah, I definitely feel like those specifically like CCC camp and any of the camps, it's 100% like grassroots. And
mhm,
again, for the audience that I've only been to DEF CON or Black Hat, you're in a conference room, you're meeting other people, there are other hackers, but there's uh, it's hard to differentiate the capitalism from like
yeah,
the level of what's out there and products and things like that, because a lot of the conferences, even DEF CON, previously there were no sponsors, it wasn't allowed to be sponsored, and now it's
mhm,
become a very commercialized place. And at Black Hat and RSA, it's very government.
mhm,
Going to a really truly grassroots events like CCC camp, you realize that these hackers that are here, maybe they have companies, but it's 100% like for the community. A lot of them are open source and very
mhm,
much anti-establishment and anti-government even.
mhm,
So
mhm.
um,
I will say that a lot of what drives Silicon Valley, I think, is that hacker ethos at its core. Say what you want about like economics and politics and what have you. There's obviously like huge problems in the world related to those. Um, The one thing I will say though is, like growing up in California, I kind of took this for granted, but there is this the ethos of a hacker, to discover and to learn and to be curious is the thing that drives people to build new and amazing things. And I think that really is alive in the Bay and in Silicon Valley generally and in tech generally. And I think that venture capital helps that grow and thrive. I won't say that like it's my favorite thing in the world. Like obviously there's a lot of problems with capital markets today that prevent innovation and prevent people from being able to build things. Um, but ultimately, like at least in my experience, it's given me a lot of opportunity. But I think that kind of captures my perspective on it. Like I said, I'm pretty moderate, just in terms of my viewpoints, and I'm not like super radical in any direction. And I can see kind of the benefits and drawbacks to both sides of. I try to see the benefits and drawbacks to all sides of most situations, and sometimes it's hard, you know. It's often hard.
It's never easy. I mean, it's very difficult among all of those things. I think I'll say this for my own personal sense of like living in Italy and being in Europe for so long. I'm noticing the areas where I am capitalistic, and I realize how American I am by thinking like, yeah, you guys can start a business, or there's like investment ideas and things, and people are like, what is that? No, no, no. Like you just pay your taxes, and the government covers things, and I think it's just the entrepreneur spirit, or maybe it's just the south of Italy, or yeah, I'm pretty much pro capitalism for most things, because I see such a massive benefit of the way that if people have money and they're investing it, they're trying to stimulate the economy in some type of sense, and they're putting their money where their mouth is by doing so, and hopefully making the world a better place while doing that, in terms of adding competition to remove bigger powers that be in general.
Yeah. It's
Lots to
interesting.
be
We
said
could go
there.
deep.
We could.
I don't know
That
if we
seems
have the
like
time for that though.
I don't. It's midnight plus 38 minutes, so
Yeah,
I
well,
probably.
thanks for having me
Yes.
on. I really enjoyed our conversation. It's great catching up with you, Chris.
Of course, you as well. Is there any other shout out you'd like to do before, whether it be for your business, anyone else that you want to
Of
shout out
course,
to?
shout out to my business. Our team has been really great. Our customers are amazing. Our investors have been amazing. Thank you all for helping us on this journey, where we're just kind of discovering our own path. But also to my mentors in the past. I will give a shout out to Albert Strassheim, who was my mentor at Cloudflare and Segment, who's now actually at Rippling. I don't think I mentioned that, but I did
Oh no!
talk about how much I love Rippling.
Wow.
And he's the CTO there now, so I think it's pretty,
Oh, perfect.
yeah, pretty apt. Which is, he went there after we started RunReveal, so that was just kind of coincidence. But I'm glad he's there, and I'm glad a good person is at that.
Super based.
So, yeah, he's just so brilliant and so like level-headed. He can, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Alan. We really
Likewise.
are excited to see what happens with RunReveal, and we hope to have you back on the show another time soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully, seeing some more growth with your company and everything else.
Yep, sounds great. Thanks.
All right, brother. Great chatting with you, man.
Yeah,
Have a great evening.
likewise. You too.